Greetings, bookworms. Today's book, The Cooler by George Markstein. Now, George Markstein was a very interesting character. He wrote quite a bit, particularly screenplays and movie scripts. He was involved in creating the Prisoner series, the very, very well acclaimed series starring Patrick McGowan, which was the follow-up to Danger Man, which became a kind of a cult classic. He also was the scriptwriter for the movie of the Odessa File, Frederick Forsyth's book. And he obviously researched his material very, very well, because quite a lot of the detail in his books were very accurate for the time, because there wasn't a lot of the stuff that's available now under the 30 years rule that's been declassified and so on from the Second World War. So this particular book, The Cooler, is about the SOE, Special Operations Executive. And in it, Captain Loach has returned to London from occupied France, and he's been rebriefed for another mission. But the mission gets delayed, and his stress levels build up, and he contacts the organization, fix him up with a female companion for the evening, shall we say. Anyway, he turns out to have a sadistic streak, and he goes to work on her with a riding crop. And the character is rather reminiscent of Neville Heath, who was a murderer, sadistic murderer, around that period during and after World War II. So because he has a lot of current sensitive information, he's packed off to a secret centre up in Scotland in a restricted area, which is called the Cooler. And in the book, it's called Inverloch. Now, the reality was that SOE did have this establishment, and it was called Inverloch, and it did exist. And the idea was you could put people on ice up there, the Cooler, and until the information they held was no longer critical, particularly people who knew about things like D-Day. While up at the Cooler, he meets one of the other inmates, a female agent called Claire, who also has a complicated story, and the plot thickens from there on in. And it's a fascinating book, really one of the better fictional books of that genre, of the resistance / SOE. It covers things like the double cross system, and what Mr. Markstein does very, very well is get into the personalities of the people who were running SOE and the associated intelligence agencies very, very well. He makes them very authentic sounding. And the atmosphere of wartime London comes over very, very well. Up in the Cooler, there's a silent killing instructor called Sadler, who's based on E.A. Sykes. And again, for its time, things like the Cooler just weren't in the public knowledge at the time. And in fact, I have read since then, much more recently, about Inverloch by the chap who was in charge of setting it up. He was in the security side of SOE. And it seems that to a large extent, Markstein got it right. But even in this more recent stuff, they weren't very clear about what it was all about and what happened there and what happened to the people who were sent there. So he portrays the attitudes of the people running the secret war very, very well. And all in all, it's a really gripping book, and it's one I do recommend.